Welcome to episode 250 of the State of Love and Trust. We're celebrating by chatting with Mike McCready about Mad Season's Above record, now 30 years old. My God. Mike describes the songwriting process with Layne Staley and how it compares to working with Cornell and Eddie Vedder. And he even shows us how he came up with the River of Deceit riff. Like he grabbed his guitar and just started playing it. And wait till you hear where a riff that didn't make the Above record went. All that and much more next with our guest.
Hey, I'm Mike McCready from Pearl Jam, and this is the State of Love and Trust.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the State of Love and Trust. It's a Pearl Jam podcast. I'm one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi, and alongside me, as always, is
Paul Ghiglieri.
Yes, I'm very excited, Paul.
I am very excited too. Thrilled, in fact.
Thrilled. I got excited and thrilled.
This is the day to remember.
This is it. I'm so excited I changed my wall. I got new posters.
Yeah, I noticed that. You switched some of those guys out. They look fantastic.
It's a new era.
I can't mind the same. They're outstanding in their perpetuity, like Mr. Mike McCready.
Jokes aside, thank you for being here. 250, amazing.
Yes.
If you want to help us get to 500, which that's a goal. It
is a goal.
One could have.
Lofty one.
Go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. And if you're listening only, Paul, what should they do?
They should rate, review, and subscribe on their preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm. It's got to be fed. Like a Mike McCready amp. As much feedback as we can get.
We do this show. We have a great time doing it. If you want to help support it, we have a Patreon. We have a pod shop. You can buy shirts like this. Means a lot to us. What means more, though, is our fundraiser for the month. And this month, in the month of March 2025, is the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, I guess apropos for our guest today. And I want you to go ahead and scan that QR code, send in a few bucks, $5 or more, get you the sticker and pin set from us.
I won't throw it this time.
Oh, he's not going to throw them this time. Oh, my God. Go back and watch Paul throw these things. And if you spend a little bit more, if you spend the most money, guess what we've got for you? A Mike McCready signed copy of the newly remastered Mad Season Above double LP. I mean, come on, people.
Yeah, that's legendary.
Break out your checkbooks. Actually, use a phone.
You've got to give. Got to give. Oh.
Use digital payment because checks don't work.
Yeah.
In this situation. So,
I don't know. We seem to be moving backwards more often these days than forward.
Okay. The people don't want to hear that, Paul. Okay. Let us move forward. So excited he's here. We're talking Mad Season. It is Mike McCready. Mad Season's only record above celebrated 30 years on March 14th, and for many music fans of a certain age, Mad Season is one of the most underrated supergroups of all time. The record marked musical territory heard and unheard by fans of Screaming Trees, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam, a veritable stew that saw everyone at the peak of their powers. Above has been remastered for vinyl on 2 LPs in various colorways with new liner notes from drummer Barrett Martin, and this week's guest, guitarist and Easy Street Records stock model, Mike McCready.
That's what they call me. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Mike. Thanks for being here.
Now, I have to ask, Michael, would this band be called anything else if you hadn't have mixed the record 10 in England?
It never would have been called this. No, because while mixing this, and this is probably what you're referring to, obviously, is I was wandering around the fields of Surrey, England at Ridge Farm Studios where we were mixing 10, and it was quite rainy, quite like Seattle. Beautiful, beautiful place. I actually, just on a side, I saw a picture of Ozzy and Randy Rhoads. I think they recorded a couple, the first 2 Ozzy records there too. So it's kind of, there's been a lot that was recorded there. So anyways, that was our first trip to England as Pearl Jam to mix our first record. And it was so fun and amazing. And at any rate, I come back from a walk, and I might have had some hash, or maybe not had some hash. I'm not sure. Probably did have some hash, and I wandered around the fields, and I came back, and the people that are working at Ridge Farm Studios had said to me as I walked in, it looks like it's the mad season. And I went, what? It's what? It looks like what? And it's the mad season. And I thought, oh, instantly, cool name. I don't know what this is. Yeah. And then he said, it's the time of the year when the hallucinogenic mushrooms come up around Surrey, England. And then they call it the mad season. And so I put it away in my brain for another day. Wow. And that's what we're talking about right now. So and
4 years later,
had I not heard it there.
Brilliant. All right.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So anyone watching this or listening probably already knows the Cliff Notes version of kind of how this band started. And if you don't, Google is your friend, guys. But suffice to say, does this band even happen if Baker doesn't adorn his bumper with a sticker that reads, "What we have here is a failure to give a shit"?
It may not have happened because of that. So, yeah, I mean.
It's a Cool Hand Luke reference. How do you go along with that?
Yeah, basically, exactly. What we have here. But he had that on the back of his Dodge Dart, which is completely burned out.
Dodge Dart?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a Dart. I can't remember, but it was beat up. But I was in rehab in Minneapolis, and I saw this car pull in, and it was just beat up to hell, and it parked, and out gets this kind of older guy. At the time, he was 40. I was 25 or 28 probably. And so he seemed old, and I'm way older than that now. So, but on the back of his bumper sticker, it said, "What we have is a failure to give a shit." And I thought, whoa, I like this guy. And we ended up getting in a room together, and we were talking about blues and Muddy Waters. And he said Muddy Waters had played at his high school in Chicago, and immediately was like, intrigued with that. And he knew a lot about Bob Dylan, so we just we hit it off immediately. And I just when I got out, I was like, well, I should bring this guy back to Seattle with me. And I don't think he's, I'd like to
because he was living there, right? In Minnesota?
He's originally from Chicago. And he played in a band called Little Charlie and the Nightcats, I think, there. And at any rate, he had been to Minneapolis to get clean or something, or had been there. And he was just down on his luck. And he came in at the tail end of, a gnarly time. And we just hit it off, and I brought him back here, and he lived with me for a little while before he found an apartment. And it wouldn't have happened had I not. I mean, who knows you never know. That's
what I'm saying.
Fate and time, and what happens and why things happen. And I was very heavily into the blues, and still am to that. And having somebody else that was akin to that and knew as much was cool to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. This is like one of the few records, the rock records of that era, that you can literally pair with a Nina Simone record, and it's just like seamless. Anyway, so Baker obviously really was the impetus for this band in a lot of ways. I mean, after all, his bass is the first thing you hear on the record when Wake Up starts. So as a bassist, as a songwriter, and as a friend, can you talk about Baker's influence on the music, band dynamic, your friendship with him?
Yeah, I mean, he was this funny guy. He came back with me, and he wasn't like anybody here in Seattle. We were all this we're all a very much isolated scene. We all knew each other. Everybody went to each other's parties. We all knew the same stupid jokes. We were cynical in a certain way. As all the Seattle cliches you could have, was what we were in our bands, and that's every band that's from here that I'm talking about. And he was this blues guy that was kind of an outsider. And he had a healthy he was definitely not PC at all. So that was kind of funny because, Seattle would, for better or for worse, would kind of, trip up on that a little bit, at times. And he didn't care about any of that. So he definitely would tell you what was on his mind. But in terms of a bass player, he had a great feel. He had a bluesy feel. It was very laid back, as you can hear on Wake Up. That was his riff to start off the whole record. And that it kind of showed his laid backness, he was a blues guy. Again, very, very stoic. And he seemed like an older, wiser guy. And we were all young at the time. And he was just this character, but he fit right in. Like he and Layne kicked it off really quickly. He was very personable and easy to get along with, and so people people dug him for that. And I think they thought he was kind of this oddity because it was different from what was here in Seattle.
Mm. So you guys recorded this record at Bad Animals, aka Studio X, right? It's kind of in the same building at the time.
Yes,
in just over a week, right?
It was probably a little bit longer than that. We did a bunch of rehearsals out at the Alice in Chains warehouse out in Mark Nafisi's studio, which is out in West Seattle for that matter. But he's so we did 2 or 3 or 4 rehearsals, and it kind of flowed very easily. We had mostly all the songs around that time, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. And then I'd say it wasn't only a week. It must have been a week and a half or 2 weeks. I mean, it was quick.
Either way, it was faster than Temple of the Dog, which was already pretty fast.
I think it was faster than Temple. Temple was the fastest thing I had been to prior to that. Been part of. But we had Brett Eliason and Sonny, and we had people that we worked with already. Mm-hmm. Brett was our sound man, and he had done a lot, so I knew we would be able to get good sounds with him, and that studio was fantastic. That was kind of the place to go. In terms of like record labels, there was going to be a conversation about whether it was going to be on Epic or Columbia, and since it was Layne was part of it, Columbia won out, which was fine because they're basically all under the same lineage or whatever. I don't know, Epic and Columbia
parent company.
Yeah, thank you. So and Pearl Jam was on Epic and Chains was on Columbia. And we just went in and got right down to work, and it was quick, and we'd do the music during the day, and then Layne would go in and do the vocals at night generally. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times I wouldn't know what was going, I wouldn't know the vocal. I mean, I would know what was going on vocally because we had rehearsed that, but when he'd do the real work, that was when he would do it at night. Overnight, and I'd be gone by that time. So I'd come in the next morning and be blown away and just go, oh shit.
It's a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because when you listen to this record, it has that like real-time bluesy feel to it.
Yeah.
I mean, and on so many levels, it almost, it sounds like, Sarah Vaughan or, Ella Fitzgerald just sitting at the mic and they're just, Sinatra at the Palms kind of a deal. Like it's really, you listen like November Hotel. I mean, it just goes. I never would have guessed that it was like a postal service approach that you guys had where they were. You were kind of coming in.
We were actually rehearsing the songs during the day. So, and Layne was from the times, but when he did his main vocals, or generally at night, he would do rough vocals during the day. And in terms of the Nina Simone and the kind of the jazz elements that you're talking about, I have to give Barrett Martin, a lot of that credit too, because he was bringing in, different, like a viola, and different kind of chimes and all sorts of, he's always thinking in kind of world music terms. I loved him because he was with the Trees and he was fucking groovy and a pounder and he was a killer drummer.
He beats the shit out of those drums, man.
He does. And I don't know how they don't explode every time he hits them. But aside from being a super smart dude, too, he knew his musical history. He wasn't afraid to experiment with that kind of stuff. And so I think that's where, we get like Long Gone Day with the do, 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 do. And because I think he came up with that bass line originally. And a lot of the, let's bring in Skerrick for sax. And that was Barrett's idea. So Barrett helped create that jazz thing, a lot, along with Baker, I would say. And Layne and I were more the rock elements, I guess, to it, if you need to put them in things. And a story about November Hotel, if I might.
Please, you may.
So November Hotel was the call numbers on the back of my dad's F4 Phantom. He was a pilot in Vietnam, and it was NV on the back of the plane, and the Phantom's like this crazy cool looking plane, and he's he was shot down over the Gulf of Tonkin, and he's survived, and he's alive till this day. And so when I came up with that, I just heard that was the I always wondered what that meant on the back of his on the aileron back there on the back. So yeah, no NV, November Hotel is it was their call sign. November Hotel, we're returning the ship or whatever. And so what I wanted the beginning of that to sound like is like a plane taking off in the middle of the Gulf of Tonkin on a small ship. Well, the Kitty Hawk was the carrier, and it was, and then that taking off, and then it goes into chaos. That was my version of what I thought that was. Everyone else might have had different feelings, but it was just a killer jam. And Layne's playing guitar on it too. He's had his little Les Paul, and so
that's wild to me that you guys have your own kind of corners or specialties, if you can. And yet at the same time, you were able to fuse those things so quickly. Mike, how do you attribute the prolificness, is that a word, of
the efficiency, the economy of sound in such a short amount of time? I mean,
he's the wordsmith.
Okay. All of those things, I think, you can't plan those things. You kind of have to have chemistry, in terms of like the first time when all the five guys in Pearl Jam got together with Dave Cruzen, that was the first situation I was ever in that I knew within a week that we're good, and I felt like we had been around for a while, even though we hadn't. I mean, of course I knew Jeff and Stone I've known Stone since 6th grade, but I've known musically, we all clicked. Even Ed coming from California. And that was the first time I've ever felt that. Mad Season was another thing that I felt. Temple of Dog was another one that was very easy like that. And the Temple thing was very exciting, and it was my first thing. I know we're not talking about that record, but Chris had written all the demos for most of that, except for Stone wrote 2. So there was a great template to learn from anyways. Mad Season, we all came up with stuff together. And, that was my thought, is like, let's come up with the stuff together. This is kind of a collective. Let's split the publishing 4 ways. Let's be, as democratic as possible as we can in this situation, which is not the case in bands a lot of times. So to answer your question on how it happened so easily, I just remember being in the middle of it and going, oh, wow, well, that was cool. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Or you have this. Layne had a riff for I Don't Know Anything, which I think he had for Chains, but they didn't use it. And I thought, oh, man, that sounds cool. Let's do that, And so he started off. He showed me how to play that song, I Don't Know Anything. And so it was a collaborative effort that had the chemistry. I guess that's how I could put it. Which you can't plan that stuff out.
I'm curious, when you marry that economy of sound with that chemistry together, do you see any similarities between the recording of Mad Season and Dark Matter in terms of like the efficiency and the swiftness of the recording? Do you prefer that approach to some of the longer stretches for other albums?
It kind of depends on that's a good question. It kind of depends on the year, of where I'm at in my life and all those things. There's, we did a Gigaton record called Gigaton. That took us like 5 years to do. That was a long haul.
I was there waiting the whole time. I remember.
Yeah. Sorry, it took too damn long. But, and other records have taken either a year or 6 months at other times. The Dark Matter record was really, I have to give credit to Andrew Watt, the producer, for kind of kicking us in our asses, because we're a big moving we're a machine with a lot of parts now, and everyone has different lives, and trying to get this. Chris Cornell said this the best. He said this that when we did the Mad Season Symphony thing, he said, you can get 80 people from Symphony to show up right on time, but you can't get 5 guys in a band to ever show up on time ever. So anyways, that in that kind of a thought process, when we didn't do that when we went into Dark Matter, and Andrew was just like, okay, don't bring any ideas down, just come down, we'll all write together, which is new for us because we've never kind of done anything with any outside writers, and have shunned that in the past. And we thought, well, why not? Let's try it, and that was quick because of his energy, because we trusted his vision, and because we're very picky. We can be very.
You've earned the right to be.
I agree with that. And, I'm in a band with a lot of type A guys, and I'm a B, so there's guys that have a lot of.
You're a badass B though, Mike.
A B plus.
Okay. I got a B plus. Better grade than I ever got in high school.
There you go.
But yeah, so I would say those two, I hadn't thought about kind of comparing those two because they're so different in a way, but in terms of how quickly they were done, that is similar.
Because everyone's in the room and you guys just made it.
We're in the room, but when we did the Mad Season record, there was no producer yet. It was mostly us. We came in first, then we brought Brett in, and he helped us get really good sounds. He helped keep us focused, like what a good producer could do. And I'm not sure if he helped us edit it at all. He probably did. I think you're going to talk to him too. So
we're going to talk to Brett and Sonny next week.
Of all that
so yeah,
stuff.
all the questions that you couldn't remember to answer, I'm sure they'll have the answers to. Sonically speaking,
you'll know for sure. He's great.
So when it comes to the melding, as we call it, I've always thought of this as having, obviously there's that bluesy influence and that world thing that Barrett brings, but I always felt there's so much Zeppelin and kind of weaving through the dynamics of loud and quiet and then going off in these weird tangents
until
through the forest and come back.
Every Led Zeppelin album had a blues song on there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
so I know you had the double neck SG. Did that come before this whole thing started or in the middle of it?
I had it before it, and you nailed it. I was, Lifeless Dead was a great example. That's what I used it on. And I was like, I'm going to make this the most Zeppelin-y riff. In my mind, I was thinking exactly that. So you called it. I was really thinking that. And having Barrett as a drummer that can do kind of Bonham type stuff like a Matt Cameron can, and, has that foot and pounding. It's just like fucking fun. It's like, okay, I can do this because I've got this fucking machine behind me playing drums and I can just let go and do my thing. And he and Baker can lock in and Layne can sing over the top of it, or Layne can play guitar in the mix of it. But I think, the Mad Season record to me is very important in terms of it's when I got clean and sober. It's the first time I felt like I could write songs, that I felt comfortable writing songs because the guys in my band and Pearl Jam were all really good fucking songwriters. And I felt intimidated and I just felt like I couldn't do it, like they could. So this record was the game changer for me, right after this, I wrote Given to Fly and so a lot of the stuff on Yield and, some of the bigger PJ songs because of this situation, and I know it gave me the power. I don't know if it's the right word power, but just kind of the confidence to write songs for Pearl Jam, and I'll always love this record and feel sad about the record. There's many things that I have many emotions about it, but I love it for that main reason.
And you were the only guitar player in this band. You'd always have compatriots playing guitar.
I wanted to do that. Yeah.
Was it terrifying or freeing or
very freeing?
Oh, great.
Cool.
Yeah. And there's parts of me that I look back at this record and I go, God, I wish I would have done this, this, and this, and this. And there's parts of,
you're always going to do that though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you're right. And even just playing River Deceit, I thought production wise, there's so much more that could have happened, but maybe it shouldn't happen, then that's less is more. And the reason why people like it is because the way it is. And that's probably what the truth is. But what was your question again? I'm sorry.
You answered it. You said it was freeing.
Yeah, it was
because you were the only guy. You're the only, I mean, aside from the, I don't know anything riff.
Yeah. And
you were responsible for all of it.
The leads I wanted to do, I got to play, I was thinking in terms of Zeppelin at that time, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, shit, I'll just do this. It just was the four of us. So
yeah,
let's do it. And that's the first situation I've ever been in like that. I've always played with another guitar player.
I thought maybe it could be terrifying because like, oh shit, I don't have Stone over here to help me out.
It was really fun. It was actually really fun, and interesting, and probably gave me more. I don't recall it being.
That's awesome.
Terrifying. I think at that time. Yeah.
Oh, I have a real quick question. I know we want to get into a little bit more of this, but our patrons were asking about the River of Deceit guitar tone, how much they love it, and I was guessing that it was a Strat through a Plexi, but you tell me what it was.
Yeah, I mean. I'll just hear.
Oh my God, he's walking to props. He's walking to the props, people.
Are you going to play it?
I'll play for it.
Are you?
Let's see if I got my amp.
Is that a Hendrix Strat?
On the State of Love and Trust.
Okay, this is too heavy of sound, but I can get it unheavy.
Live demo, Mike McCready.
Hang on, sorry.
McCready feedback. That's how we're going to start the show.
All right, so.
Ooh, a little chorus?
Yeah, a little bit of flange on there.
Or flange.
Anyway, so what made it sound that way is the second position.
Oh, the in-between?
On the Strat. Sorry. Uh-huh. There's 5 positions.
Yep.
It's the second from the top. And then it's also the one I use for... so you can kind of hear it.
You get Hunger Strike that way too. Okay.
Then. So that's the tone that you're hearing now.
So what is the amp then? Obviously it's a Strat.
I've got this Fender Tone Master amp modeling thing that I'm going through right now.
I was just going to ask you about that because I've noticed that since the 23 tour, you've gone Tone Master, and some of my friends who are guitar nerds were like, no tubes, what is he doing? And I'm like, it's Mike McCready, you can do whatever he wants.
I can tell you. Well, I mean, I didn't go to the decision lightly at all. I still do have a couple tube amps, so I mix them. I mix both.
Mm-hmm.
But we A/B'd every single one of my amps to the system that I have now. Mm-hmm. And it's not Tone Master. I'm forgetting what the system is. My tech created it, which is terrible, which I don't remember the name of it. But Josh Schreibeis is his name, and he's the total genius. He's the guy that created my system with amp modeling and things. And they sounded exactly the same as my Marshall JCM 800 or exactly. And the thing about it for me was they sounded exactly the same in every single show I played. So I consistently get a great tone and then create a better tone if I needed it per song. And I've never had that kind of flexibility before, or I had never thought about it before. I never really cared. Now I do care. So at any rate, I would go as far as saying that it's helping me get better as a player. And I know that just from the last Dark Matter tour. I got better.
Well, you got humidity if you're outside or inside, and it's a whole thing. Yeah,
all of that. And with it's generally the same. So it's identical in my mind. I'm sure a lot of guitar purists would argue with that.
Oh man, wait for the comments, Mike.
No.
I mean, it's a beautiful sound.
I've done it both ways and for 35 years. So and I'm kind of this is where I'm at now.
Speaking of River of Deceit, I think you said that song was probably a riff you intended for Pearl Jam. And I think many folks out there may know that the Pearl Jam one-off Falling Down morphed into the Rockfords Distress. Is there anything else left off? Can you think of anything else? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I came up with that during the Mad season, from what I recall. I don't remember that being a Pearl Jam idea.
Oh, okay.
I remember that specifically just playing the riff with Barrett and Baker and Layne in the room. And we also did it on Ed's radio show. That's another time we did it. And that was, I remember writing it on the spot, and Barrett helping me arrange it.
We're going to fire our researcher then.
That's okay.
You might be
right. You might be right. It was a long time ago. But
Falling Down became Distress, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay. Did anything else left off above find new life in a Pearl Jam song later on?
Anything that was left off. So that would have been the second record that I probably brought in. I tried to bring in one of the riffs. I tried to bring into Ozzy. That was it, and this is
and that record like 10 years ago.
This is a long time ago. This was in 1919. It was in 2002, maybe like 2002 or 1. There's a God, what was his
Down
name?
to Earth record.
What's that?
Down to Earth.
Yeah, was that the record? Okay. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, Ozzy would not remember this, but and just because for whatever reasons, maybe he did, but it was me, Ozzy, this epic Kaz, this epic rep, and a guitar, and the song. Let me see if I can. I just happen to have a guitar.
More props, Mike McCready. Don't trip over anything, Mike.
Jesus Christ.
We don't need a broken rib scenario again.
Oh, man, I already did that.
I know. That's been done. Let's move on past that.
First day of our fucking Dark Matter tour. Straight. And I've been trying to not do anything dangerous and getting on stage.
We got a jazz master there?
Yeah. It's a Johnny Marr version.
Ooh, nice.
What are you playing for us now?
So the riff. It's all right. something like this. Oh, good Lord. Something like that. Something like that, but the other part was. So that was it. I forget what that was called, but that was for the second Mad Season record. I brought that riff to Ozzy, and I was playing it through a little amp, and I think he listened to it, and he just didn't work. Wasn't into it. So I should have probably done a really good job of recording it and bringing him the original. Maybe would have been a great.
Or he might have looked at you and said, "Well, Michael, Randy would have played it this way."
I would have said I worship Randy Rhoads back in the day. So I would, man, Randy. Anyways, so that. I don't know how we got onto that, but I've never told that story, but that was that song, and I forget the name of it. It was on the second record. It was something, oh God. Anyways, but that was the riff that I brought to Ozzy, and that he did not use, but
the
discarded riff by Ozzy. So nothing into a later Pearl Jam song that you can remember.
Not that I recall. I don't, okay. I think I was right after that. We did the Yield record, so I was experimenting with tunings at that time, and so
open G,
open G, and then Given to Fly is like open D, and I also do Faithful, which is a weird G C thing, which came out of that time. So those were songs that I wrote those when it snowed one day in Seattle. So I was stuck in my house, and that was after all the Mad Season record. Those two. So off the top of my head, I cannot remember if anything came from that, though.
Okay.
I'm glad that Lanegan's finally sang on 3 of them, though,
Yeah, they're great.
I knew that was never going to happen,
With a little help from Peter Buck, huh?
Yeah, Peter Buck came in, and he he brought his what did he have? He had like his Tom Petty guitar, the Rickenbacker, and it was like a Rickenbacker 12-string. And
nice.
I think it's Black Book of Fear he plays on.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was just a cool riff that he came up with while we were the 4 of us without a singer at that time. And
was he invited, or he just kind of show up? Hey, you guys practicing? What's going on?
I think he was, for some reason, I feel like he was around the studio at that time. I remember the thing I do remember is that he was leasing a white Jaguar, which was this killer car. He was telling me all about leasing fancy cars, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." But he and Barrett were friends at that time, and I knew him a bit just from the scene and everything. And he had moved to Seattle.
Okay.
But Barrett and he were probably doing stuff at that, like doing some sort of world music thing that was going to happen. In that, I would imagine. I think that's where he came in on that situation. Barrett asked him if he would come in too. And he said, "Yeah."
I mean, there's some eclectic beats on this record.
Yeah,
the percussion. There's a very eclectic nature to it at times. So.
And that's all Barrett. I mean, he's so that he's so his arsenal of drums is from around the world. It's like,
did you happen to see his latest tour that he was doing?
I have not. He's been down in South America, though. I thought
he was doing a one-man show with like every percussion instrument you could see. He was also filming it for some sort of like docu-series thing.
That makes sense. Okay.
Just going around the world, like telling stories and like doing things, and like, this is wild. Guys, big man bun going on. Yeah. I didn't see it. No.
Yeah.
I just saw the Instagram stories.
I would love to have seen that. No, but it sounds like him. I mean, that he's got a degree in ethnomusicology, and so he can kind of, he's got that kind of brain. And, he's recorded indigenous tribes in the Amazon, or he's been with witch doctors or whatever, and hung out with I'm being facetious there, but he has done a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So
and again, back to the Mad Season record, you can hear the early inklings of that on, got it on Long Gone Day for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the track that closes the Moore show, it's like 12 minutes long. Builds.
Yeah.
The title's escaping me, but people.
You're talking about November Hotel? Did we end it with that?
There you go. That's one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that song's like 7+ minutes on the record. So.
Yeah,
it is, and that, come to think of it, that came out of Barrett's drum. There
you go.
He started that, and I threw the riff over the top of it with a phaser that made it go no, made a weird sound.
Did that happen to remind you of how WMA happened, where it's just like, oh, there's a groove, let's just go ahead and do something over it?
That's an interesting comparison. WMA was different because we took Abrazese's drum loop and we spliced it. And then that's what that is. So he didn't play it all the way through. He was just playing this cool beat. And Brendan took it and Jeff or somebody, and they spliced it and made it into that. Stone put the riff over it. I made a bunch of weird sounds. And Ed, came up with the lyrics. So that one was more thought out, I think. This one was off the cuff of him doing this.
Just go. Let it be.
And then going into a halftime thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you... actually didn't even plan this question, but do you look at the Rockfords record from a lyrical writing perspective in the same way you do from a songwriting perspective on this record?
Thanks for asking that question. The Rockfords record to me was different because it had Carrie Ockrey, who I really loved and do as a singer, a female singer, and not that there should be any difference or anything like that, but there is, and I loved what she did with Goodness. I liked Hammerbox a lot. And the guys and the rest of the guys, Danny Newcomb, Chris Friel, Rick Friel, were all in my high school, the first band I was ever in called Warrior in 1979, Then I did all that in Shadow, and I had a Kramer, and that's interesting. There's a side story to that. We were playing at the Moore Theater in 1984, and Jeff Ament came and walked in right when I was doing that tapping. And I have a picture of it in my spandex and print mullet, and I gave him the picture of me tapping. I'm sure he hated it at the time.
Amazing.
But our singer Rob Burko Weber, he brought Jeff in at that time. I hadn't met him yet. But to answer your question about the Rockfords, the Rockfords for me was like a homecoming. It was like, okay, I'm getting back together with the guys who I spent my 10,000 hours with. I mean, if that's the way you want to look at it, we practiced 5 days a week for 6 years, and in this like a community, really nice houses around. I can't believe they let us do this because we were really fucking loud. But for years I did that. And then the three of us moved to California for a year.
Right.
I got Crohn's disease, but I played a bunch of shows down with Rick and Chris. I became a better lead player down there. So it was kind of a homecoming for me. So a little different than Mad Season, but equally as important to me in terms of creating things. Because it's with guys that when we first discovered rock, AC/DC, Judas Priest, when I was 1978, 79. When I
can't forget Kiss, Mike.
No, Kiss is number one reason. Kiss, I cannot forget Kiss. I will not. Thank you for bringing it up. Rick Friel, who was the bass player, had a Kiss lunchbox, and he was on the school bus going to 6th grade, and that's where I met him, and that's what changed my life. I was like, what is that? And I was
Carrie was ragging on you guys when we talked to them about
What's that?
Kiss. Yeah, so she was ragging on you guys about Kiss when we talked to the rock.
Oh yeah. Because we wouldn't shut up about it because we just too many facts about Kiss that will just bore you to death. But yet we'll still bring them up every single day. And Pearl Jam on the road, we'll talk about Kiss at least once a day.
Really? Who? You and Jeff?
Jeff, Matt
for sure.
And then we kind of drag Ed into it a little bit later because Ed was a runner for a Kiss show years ago.
Was it really?
San Diego, yeah. He was a runner for shows back in San Diego.
I mean, Strummer, I know, but like
that was the Bacchanal, which is a place we played. Jeff played She in his band Deranged Diction. Matt was in a Kiss
called Kiss, right?
Do you know this? Do you know the story?
Yeah, the legal problem Kiss.
Oh yeah, you know it. All right, so
yeah,
I can tell it if you want. I know we're veering off.
If you guys,
this is for the hardcore, Mike.
You guys dressed up as the Village People. I was at that show in October of 2000. Wait, maybe you dress up as Kiss one day. I don't know.
I was Peter Criss in 1977, so I have done it. That's photos on the internet.
You've played Black Diamond, so
played Black Diamond with Ace Frehley and Matt singing it like he did in his Kiss cover band when he was 18.
That was in the Garden, right?
He got a cease and desist order.
Yes.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Anyways.
So we love that, but you're right.
I'd be remiss if we didn't take a minute. I just want to talk a little bit about Layne here for a second. Barrett Martin said there's a dark beauty about this record, and we didn't know Layne. You did, obviously, and what we were able to glean from interviews and his music feels like a perfect summation of who he was, dark beauty. Is there another way to you that articulates who he was as a musician?
I would say, I first got to really know Layne. I saw those guys in Diamond Lie that years ago before that, and Layne was kind of around the scene, a little bit younger than me, but I didn't know him back then. But when Mookie Blaylock, or before we were Pearl Jam, we opened up for Alice in Chains going up and down the West Coast and in Canada. Mm-hmm. And the Bacchanal was one of those shows. And that's when I kind of got to know him really well, and all those guys, we partied together, we hung out together. This was our first kind of taste of, wow, we actually could quit our day jobs and we're playing in shows at clubs. And, it was right when the dream was starting to hit. He was always super nice. I don't ever remember him talking shit about people. I may just have some blank about that, but I don't recall that. He would joke about stuff. He was funny, but he wasn't like a negative dude, from what I recall. Whereas you think he would be, I think, you think he would be very...
Kevin Martin told us he was just the sweetest guy.
Totally. Barrett's right. He was totally that way, and probably overwhelmed with his stardom and things that, as we all were at times in that process. And in terms of when we first started the band, we were talking about lyrics and whatever. And I was like, dude, just you fucking write all the lyrics. You're Layne, it's up to you. It's all good. I'm not going to try to tell you this is, all of us, whatever, but, you're really good at that. So let's do that, And so I followed that, in terms of River Deceit, his lyrics for me are describing him being caught in the downfall of addiction and darkness and knowing he can't get out, but still singing about them, which is heavy. And
that's an awareness.
The level of
man.
Self-awareness is profound, though. When
it's
you think
very
about
profound, and it's haunting, and it's sad to hear at times. I can sometimes listen to this record, and other times I can't. But that's okay, because the record is a very honest record of where he was coming from at that time. Yeah. And where we all were, we were all just having success and things. Baker, this is a whole new thing he walked into, from playing little blues clubs in Chicago to Rock Candy, and now we're doing a video and and all sorts of stuff. And Barrett had some success with the Trees, and Seattle had turned into this giant monolith that we all know about now. When it's prior to that, it was nothing like that. It was tons of small clubs. And you couldn't play if you were underage, which all of us were. So we had to put our own shows on. And it was Boeing was the biggest thing. It was out of Seattle. It was very small and provincial and dark and rainy. So we all fucking just practiced all the time in our. So I'm giving you the backstory of that, because that's where our mental state, mine was going into everything blowing up. Mad Season, lyrically, in my mind, is very poignant because, again, Layne's calling out his struggle that he's having in a very honest way. And, he and Mark were both having that struggle, and so hence they're together on a couple of those songs.
Right.
Yeah. It's very authentic, very human.
Yeah. And I think that's what I've heard over the years. Thank you for saying that, from fans who I've seen, hundreds, if not thousands of tattoos of Mad Season, and I hear the authenticity, or like, oh, I've been through some shit, and I listened to this record and I got clean, or this, or, it means something. And that's because of Layne and how I don't know how honest he was, I guess.
Well, there's a nakedness too to it, Mike. And I kind of step back and go, Mike has played music with guys who are super good at writing lyrics, number one, but the naked honesty in these lyrics is palpable. And you did it here. Ed is famous for it. Chris is famous for it. So in this broader picture, like, what is it like playing music for guys that write and sing this way?
I mean, I've been blessed to be around amazing singers. It's just been, even in the earliest days of my band Shadow, we were a kind of a punk metal band. I always thought in terms of like what the music should do behind the singer. It's not over the singer. And when Ed came and we were doing that, we were doing Temple and our first record concurrently at the same time. So a lot was happening very fast. My job in my mind to this day is to come up with melodies sometimes to help the singer in my mind, to go, there's a song called I Am Mine of ours. And I go, da, 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 da. So I'm following his lyric to accentuate what he's singing in my mind. I don't want to play over it, and I'm a lead player. So, you think I would want to do all that. But in terms of, Chris's songs, they were written out. They were already done. I just had to play them to the best of my ability. And with specifically Reach Down, when I came into I'll go on the Temple thing for a second. When I came into the Temple thing, it was my first experience playing with the big dogs. It was just like, okay, these are all guys that have record deals. They've been at it for a bit. I've been playing in bands longer than all of them. I've been playing since I was 11 in bands, since 11 and a half. But I never had that kind of success. I wasn't, I was trying for years. But at any rate, and my mental state back then was like, okay, Andy Wood OD'd, he died. And then I got a call out of the blue from Stone. But I had known Stone and we were tight and whatever. So I was looking at that situation as, okay, I want to be very respectful of this Temple of the Dog situation because he was their friend. And I didn't want to be I didn't want to push myself in their face too much. But that's what they wanted. That's at least that's what Chris wanted. And when this may be already out there, but I did one pass to the Temple lead and he was like, I think you can do better. I'm going to go outside and have a cigarette. Just go for it. And I was like, okay, fuck it. I go, crack the Heineken, hit it, and just did it in one take. I after having that kind of, what's the word? Just like kind of, you can do it. I'm thinking, I can't think of the word. Support from Chris, which he was very supportive of Ed too in the early days too. So I have to, and I was always love him for that. Because Ed felt, when he got up here, I think he felt, like an outsider because Seattle was very insular, and Chris grabbed onto him real quick and took him out for beers, and they went hiking, all sorts of stuff. So there was a healing kind of a thing to the Temple record that I wanted to be very aware of, but they wanted my best, I think. So, and that's when I knew that, I was like, fuck, I'm going for it,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, we're talking about
that question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it does. It does.
Yeah. And with Ed, again, I'm always conscious of wanting to support his vocal or not be on top of it, or I want to have a melody underneath it or a rhythm, Yeah.
Well, speaking of vocals, let's talk a little bit about Mark Lanegan's contributions. He sings on "I'm Above" and "Long Gone Day," as well as 3 tracks that would show up later on the reissue. Can you recall how Mark joined those sessions?
I know exactly how. Layne asked me if he could be part of it.
Simple. All right.
And and I'm not saying that for any kind of. He was like, "Hey, can Mark? Can I bring Mark in on some of these songs?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, you can bring Mark in on those songs. Please bring him in." And it was a thing, and he wrote about this in his book. So it's just Layne was kind of like, "Well, can we give him a couple points on the record?" And I think he didn't have any money at the time, and I was like, "Sure." That's. You never know what a record's going to sell or anything, but the point of that record wasn't to go, it needs to sell this. And that, we just did it. My naive approach to bringing that whole thing together was I'm going to get everybody to get clean, and sober because I am, and it's great and blah, blah, blah. But I was naive in terms of the fact that everybody has to figure that out for themselves. I can't save anybody. So my intentions were that first. And then also to do some cool music, so the money part of it I didn't care about it. I was fine with that. My Pearl Jam was doing fine. I was doing okay.
Were you disappointed at all that it didn't work that way?
In terms of
people seeing the light of being clean and like you did?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, I had to learn, we have to learn things by doing them wrong, and at least I do. And, sure. I was sad to see Layne go down that road, and because it's a horrible road to see. And if you guys have known guys that have addiction issues,
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know what it's like. You just want to shake them. And, and I've been there and people wanted to shake me. So, I've been on both sides of that. So I luckily got out of it. Just by luck, I think, and work or whatever. But yeah, it hurt. It was just like, oh, fuck, man. And selfishly, we had another record ready to do right after this record. We were going to call it Disinformation, or maybe call the band that, or I'm not sure what we were doing, but we had a bunch of tunes, and which turned into the ones that Lanegan sang on, like you were
right.
To.
Yeah.
And him and Mark were just kind of gone by that time and didn't show up. So it just kind of sat there, and so it ended. It was an interesting thing because part of me is like, I probably shouldn't have been around any of that because it was kind of gnarly, and I was trying to keep my thing together. But I'm glad I did, now we have this, so it is,
I'm curious, Mike. Jerry Cantrell said candidly that initially he was pissed that Layne went off to play with Mad Season, but that after reflection, he came to realize that if a musician goes off to do something with others, when they come back to their primary band, then they bring those experiences with them. So at Pearl Jam, all of you guys, you've got a lot of different musical outlets outside of the group. You all do. What did you bring back to Pearl Jam from this Mad Season experience?
I mean, I brought back some good songs, I think. I think, Given a Fly, that became a number one single. Just not to say that, but it's just stuff happened that didn't happen in the first record with me. And, also, Faithful, like I was talking about earlier, there's another one that I'm forgetting right now, Brain of Jay, those kind of things. All of those kind of came out of the Mad Season experience for me. And I'm sorry that he felt that way. I remember he was at the show. I was just trying to get Layne to get back to go with those guys too. I was trying to save him in my mind, again, naively, not knowing that wasn't going to work, or help him, I guess is the point. But our band was always, Pearl Jam was always if we go out and play with different people, like Jeff would create Three Fish, or Stone had Brad, or, whatever side things were happening was a great freedom. And then we would learn from other musicians and bring that back into the fold. So that psychologically, that's how Pearl Jam worked in my mind back then, and to this day, actually. And that's always helped us kind of move in different directions, I think, and not stay in something. I think playing with other people, for me, it's always a learning experience. And I always like, oh, wow, you can do that. I didn't know that, it's always positive for me.
Yeah.
And new bands too. I mean, I know you love the band Thunderpussy. I saw them down here at the Troubadour a couple months ago. Fucking unbelievable band. I know you played with them when they came out to Seattle.
All the time. Put the first single out on Hockey Talker Records.
Yeah, of course.
Dearly. Yeah.
Pete Droge also on Hockey Talker Records.
Oh man, Pete.
Excellent songwriter.
I helped Pete get a record deal years ago, and Stone was trying to help him, and we were having a night of drinking. I don't know if you know all these stories, but we were drinking at this place called Hattie's Hat, and he has a song called "I'm Drunk," and it goes, "I'm drunk and drinking at Hattie's. I had a quarter or two." Back when we were drunk and drinking, that night I said, "I'm gonna give you some money to record a record," whatever. And then I woke up on his floor the next morning, and he's like, "You still want to give me some money to record a record?"
I'm like, "Sure do."
I said, sure. And so I gave him like $5,000 or something like that, and he recorded a demo, and he had a song called Strayland Street, which was so awesome. And we got it to Brendan O'Brien, who was our producer at that time. And he got signed. So I helped him along with that. And I also worked at a pizza place called Parkoura's with him. I helped him get that job, anyways.
Man.
But Seattle's very tight. And so with Thunderpussy, they're just, when I first saw them, they were doing that song, "Oh Well" by Fleetwood Mac, Down, down, down. I was like, how do they know what the song is? They're all young, how do they, and that's just like such a stupid thing for me to say. We have kind of the same brain in terms of what we like in 70s rock.
I
Whitney
mean,
and I are like brother and sister. I think, in terms of rock playing.
They had a Page and Plant thing going on.
Totally.
I was like, what? And then I was like this far away from them. And I'm like, I got pictures that I can show you. But
you can see it. You can see the energy that comes out of them. And
it was so good.
Great songwriters. Molly is a freaking star. Molly Sides is a star in my mind. So
yeah.
I think they're going out in November. I wish they were bigger than they are. They need to, I've been trying to push them along as long as I could, but I'm still pushed to her.
Well, between what you do and with Loose Groove, I mean, just you guys are just great about supporting acts. So.
If we have a vehicle to do that, it's very easy to do that. I think that's why, and I love them. They're all dear friends of mine. So
not to bring it down, but this record has, sadly been associated with the far too soon passings of, we got Baker and Layne and Mark and even Chris after the symphony,
Oh, yeah.
And you said
I had to bring out all my records just so I could remember.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is that still available, by the way? Can someone?
I think you can get it through 10 Club, through the program. I think we still have stuff there, So I don't know if it might be an Easy Street or something. I'm not sure.
Rob Skinner, if you are watching this, please send me one. I'll pay you money. Santos, help me.
Yeah.
Mike, the cellophane's still on that record, Mike.
It is.
I know.
Yeah, you're like, it's all in here, Paul.
Send your address to Tim Bierman and I'll see if I can get one sent out to you guys. All right?
I have to ask.
Yeah. Sorry.
I have to ask. Since that interview, and you were saying how hard it was.
But you're talking about all the guys that died. Yes. Yeah. What was the question? Sorry.
So in 2013, we mentioned the Music Radar interview that you guys did for their first reissue.
Yes.
And you were saying how it was really hard. Maybe twice he listened to the entire record since the band kind of dissolved,
right? Because
it was so difficult. You mentioned at the top of the show a little bit. Well, we're 12 years later, and Mark Lanegan has also been added to that list. Unfortunately,
yeah, it's crazy.
This record, I mean, it's crazy, but like, has the pain of this faded at all? Has Mark's passing compounded and brought it back up? Do you look at this as just a reverence of art at this point? Have you gotten through it all? Like where are you with this record?
That's a good question. I'm sure I went through some stages of grief with this thing, and I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but yeah. I mean, I think of Chris every day, so it's like, and then Layne is right in there too. And, Mark to a certain degree, but more Chris recently, I think, as that was the one that was the most shocking. Yeah. And, Seattle has such a terrible cliche that we all know that every one of these guys are gone. And for whether it's, suicide or addiction or both or, and it just sucks. And it always makes me wonder what would they have done? What would Layne be doing now? What kind of music would he do? Would he be into jazz or something? What kind of singing would he be into? Like Tony Bennett or something. I don't know. I'm just like, would he be a dad like I am? What would Chris be doing? Kurt or, Andy, if, that whole thing. I would never have been in this situation had that not happened. So there's that weird dynamic that I wrestled with for many years. But I feel like I can look at everything with with a point of view of a survivor's point of view, I guess. I'm still sad that those guys are dead. It's just a waste. And it's Chris the one I think of the most, I think recently, because it's the most shocking of all of them,
We'll end on an uplifting note here.
No, it's fine. I'm glad you guys asked it, because you can't talk about Seattle music without that darkness.
It's unfortunate.
It's true, but if you could get those folks back on stage for one song, and they all looked at you and said, Mike, your pick. What would that song be?
Okay, let me think that one out.
Well, with all the singers, it's got to be Right Turn.
Oh yeah, because they did do that. That's so cool. I would say In the Light by Zeppelin. I think that's one of my favorite riffs of all time. I'm trying to think of something giant, huge song
that's pretty big.
Big singers on. There's probably something else on my mind, but or just write some songs with all those guys. That would be incredible.
That'd be more fun.
Why not do that and see what they wanted to do? That would be the cool part. So, yeah.
Well, Mike McCready, I really appreciate you coming on this little dog and pony show we've got going on here.
No worries.
I know you've got a big old 11-date spring tour with the boys.
Big one, yeah. All 11 dates. Yeah, we're doing
all 11 dates.
Playing in the South, Andy in Pittsburgh, getting ready to start going over. I should know the Dark Matter record by now, but I think I've forgotten it since our last leg. So
fair.
I think it's still, I feel like I'm still kind of on tour a little bit. So
the question is, Mike, do you know Got to Give? Because the people need to hear Got to Give.
I think you only played it like twice.
I do know Got to Give. I do know. We've been over it. I went over it a whole bunch of times. It's just
Tell Ed it's great. Both performances were great.
It's a great song. I'm not the set guy, so it's like I throw out ideas here and there, but
get him a really nice Barolo, Mike.
Huh?
Get him a really nice Barolo.
Oh yeah, he'll
grease those wheels.
He already has.
Did he tell you why he just doesn't feel like playing it?
Ed, Ed will make a set, and you guys might know this already, that's based entirely on what the night is. He will look at every set list that we've ever played in New Jersey and go, we opened up with Release in 92, so we can't do that. So 94, we fucking played this in the middle. We played that. He'll look at all that stuff, put it together. And then what his kind of feeling and attitude about the time is now, this is what I'm thinking, I feel like he does. He puts the set list in that way. And trying to cover everyone's songs that people have written in the band too. So he's just been leaving that one out, and I don't know why. It may come back. You never know. It is kind of fun to play. So it's just I just kind of go, okay, that's right, let's do it. And I just want to know 2 hours before the show what we're playing.
What's the latest he's ever given you a set list? Good Lord.
It could be an hour. It can be right up there. And by the time and that's kind of towards the ends of tours. Yeah, where it's kind of the problematic is the beginning of tours when we haven't gone over a lot of, like something like. All
right, we're playing Other Side tonight. Let's go. Hold on, what now?
That ain't happening. We've got to go over Other Side a few times. Yeah. Then do it at sound check. Yeah. Then do it that night. So, yeah, I always want more rehearsal time than we have. Yeah, which is fine. It keeps us on our toes.
You've got rehearsal time coming up very soon in a couple of weeks, I imagine, before you guys head out. In the meantime, it's a happy 30th to Mad Seasons Above. Yes. Like I said before, it's available in multiple colorways that you could purchase, remastered by Mr. Stites, I believe, which is he's been around the business a couple of times. Yeah. So go get your copy. And my goodness, Mike McCready from Pearl Jam and Shadow and the Rockfords.
Thanks for throwing
Mad Season.
You got it.
Thanks, Mike.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Listen, hey, big thank you to Mike for coming on. As I said, this dog and pony show that we call State of Love and Trust podcast. So
very grateful, privilege and a pleasure to chat with him, and really enjoyed just kind of doing a deep dive into this fantastic record. It's one of my favorites. So very happy we had the opportunity to chat with him and learn a couple of new things about it.
We got some nuggets, Paul, as they say.
Yeah, we did.
A couple of nuggets, maybe an exclusive in there. I don't know. World premiere. That Ozzy riff. We got some live demos, Paul. Who gets live demos?
Well, anytime Mike picks up a guitar, you're in for a treat. So we were toasted to two of them. So could not be more thrilled.
If you were listening only, go back, get on the YouTube, and watch Mike play the guitar on the show. Yeah, fun times.
Very fun.
If you were watching, you should be liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting the bell for notifications, all the things that the YouTube algorithm wants you to do. And if you're listening only, Paul, what should they be doing then?
They should rate, they should review, they should subscribe on their preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed the algorithm the way that Mike fed us some riffs tonight.
Ooh. I always wait to see what you're going to do because these are...
You never know. It's like a McCready solo. You just never know where it's going to go.
250 times and you still got new ones. I love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Paul, 250 times.
I know. Huh?
I've switched to
Look at
a
us.
tasty beverage here.
I have not yet, but I
I'm
will
cheersing
be
to all of you.
henceforth.
Who knows what's in that cup? Could be tea, could be tincture, could be a little of the adult sauce. Who knows? If you're celebrating with us, this is actually a very heartfelt thank you, because
Yes.
I know numbers are just numbers, but 250 is a nice round number, and it means a lot to us that you guys are here.
It
and
does.
we're just happy that we were able to give you a little bit of a gift in Mike McCready on the show, talking Mad Season, and it's just been a great ride so far.
It has.
I say.
Yeah, so far. Could not have thought of a better way to celebrate 250 than the way we did tonight. So very grateful.
Well, guys, the celebration of Mad Season Above continues next week, as we talked about with Mike earlier. And we've got Sonny Felberg, the audio technician. We've got Brett Eliason, friend of the show, mixer, producer. We're going to talk about the production of this record, how it all came together, how they got the sounds, how do you dial in the massive drum sounds of Barrett Martin. How do you tame that, Paul?
I don't know, but I can't wait to find out.
We're going to find out next week. And until then, you've been listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.